Hello, welcome to Friday COVID Convos. I am your host, Yasmeen, and I am being joined by the lovely Dr. Lisa Dunkle. Dr. Dunkle, for those of the people that do not know who you are, can you give a little background of who you are and your background in medicine?
Sure. I'm Elisa Dunkle. I am a pediatric infectious disease specialist, and I have been working in the pharmaceutical industry for several decades. First working on HIV drugs at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, and then I switched over to vaccines a number of years later, and have been working on recombinant protein vaccines, first at one company and now at Novavax. So it's this has been my opportunity to step forward and try to help with the COVID pandemic.
So for the viewers, I'm sure a lot of viewers have not heard of Novavax. So what is Novavax and how does it really work?
Well, Novavax is the name of the company, and it's a vaccine company that uses a technology called a recombinant DNA process. So what we do with the COVID vaccine is we make a spike protein, and then we add to it something called an adjuvant, which is a material that causes the body to really develop a really good immune response to the spike protein. And that immune response is what then protects against somebody catching COVID. And, everybody's heard about the mRNA vaccines that have they give genetic instructions to the human body. And then there's some that use a cold virus, an adenovirus, to deliver the genetic material to make the body make the immune system. We chose the process of mimicking the protein, the spike protein, and adding an immune booster, if you will.
So as far as the approval process with the vaccine coming through Novavax, where would you guys say y'all are at as far as being approved with the vaccine?
Well, we're in the process of regulatory filings around the world to a number of different countries. We're also preparing our submission of data for the FDA here in the U.S., and we anticipate that submission will be completed by the end of this year. So we are hoping for authorization by one or more of these countries in the next couple of months. We also are in the process of applying to the WHO for their emergency use listing, and that will cover even more countries around the world that don't necessarily have their own health authorities.
And I'm sure in creating the vaccine, there were clinical trials. So for people that don't know what a clinical trial is, can you explain what a clinical trial is and why we need clinical trials in making vaccines?
Clinical trials are really the only way to determine that a medicinal product is safe and effective. They're highly controlled. Everybody who volunteers to be in one is first of all has to volunteer, provide informed consent, and they're assured a very careful follow-up to make sure that we don't miss any unexpected issues with safety, and that we collect all of the data that we need to indicate that the product is effective. In the case of our trial, we randomized the patients in a blinded fashion, so they didn't know whether they got active vaccine or placebo. And we followed them for their safety. Everybody had their little iPhone with an app to report their safety issues on a daily basis. All of that information goes straight into our database, and patients were brought back to the sites to be followed and to get their second shots and this sort of thing. So we collected all of that kind of information up until in the blinded placebo-controlled setting until the emergency use authorization vaccines authorized in the U.S. were recommended for all adults, and that was in April of this year. And at that time, to ensure that all of our participants actually got active vaccine, we implemented what's known as a blinded crossover, which means we brought all these people back to their investigative sites, and they received the opposite of what they got the first time around. So the people who had gotten that ensured that the people who'd gotten placebo at the beginning of the trial got active vaccine in the April-May timeframe, so that we knew that none of our participants had been had vaccine withheld from them. Everybody got active vaccine. Then we continued to follow them for continuing safety evaluation, as well as potential for developing COVID and being able to ascertain the continued efficacy of the vaccine. So it's a very controlled situation. It's a little bit unrealistic. I mean, this is not real life, being in a clinical trial, but it's the safest way to collect the kind of information we need to be absolutely sure that when health authorities approve our product, it is in fact safe and efficacious, and it will do what we say it will do.
So how many participants did you guys have in the trial?
We have about 30,000 patients, and they were first randomized. 2/3 of them got active vaccine and 1/3 got placebo, and then at the crossover it was just the opposite. We were informed and encouraged by the federal government who funded this trial to make sure that the trial participants accurately reflected the population in the U.S. that was suffering the most from COVID. And for that reason, we made enormous efforts to make sure that we had really good representation from racial and ethnic minorities. So of the 30,000, about 14% of our patients are African Americans. Between 6 and 7% are Native Americans, American Indians. 20% are Hispanic or Latino. So we went to the communities where these people live and work, and we made sure that we made the trial available to the folks who needed it most.
Okay. And like you were just saying, compared to the other vaccines, diversity has really been the top thing with Novavax that has made it so special. Can you kind of talk about why you feel like diversity is so important in trials like this?
Well, I think that there's a couple reasons. One is that it's an important evaluation of the product to make sure that you are going to see the same level of efficacy and safety in all the people who ultimately get the vaccine. But the other part of it, I think, is the trust issue, and I think that's come up a lot in the last year. We want people of all colors and stripes and ethnicities to be confident that the Novavax vaccine is the right one for them, and including people like them in our trial is the only way to do that.
Okay. So did Novavax have a certain process that they followed to ensure that the trial was safe for everyone?
Well, it had very close monitoring of the safety data. In fact, we have an independent group of physicians who are our protocol review safety team, and they looked at the safety data every week for the last year, and to make sure that there was nothing coming out that we didn't expect or that we weren't happy about. They look at at blinded data, but our NIH-sponsored Data Safety Monitoring Board looks at unblinded data on a monthly basis. So they look at both the safety profile of the participants as well as the numbers of cases of COVID that were happening, and that's how we knew in late April, early May that the vaccine was over 90% effective in preventing COVID. And that's the DSMB looked at the data and told us that. And, the rest is history, I guess.
Okay. So out of all the participants, right. So out of all the participants, were there any participants with sickle cell disease, sickle cell trait, or any other rare illness that you guys took note of and maybe recorded?
Well, we take medical histories from all the participants when they join the trial, and I went back and looked at those histories just recently. And while we do have, maybe fewer than 20, but we do have some with patients with hemoglobinopathies and with some anemias and that sort of thing. None of them specifically reported sickle cell disease or sickle cell trait. I think trait can obviously be asymptomatic sometimes, so there may be cases we don't know about. But it's really up to the participant to tell us what they want to tell us about their medical history. And, we don't have anything that specifically says they have sickle cell disease.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Dunkle, for joining me. If anybody wants to learn more about Novavax, or the clinical trial with Novavax or the vaccine, where can they go to learn about it?
You can go to our website, our wonderful new website, which is novavax.com. And it tells you all about our processes, all about our manufacturing, all about our portfolio of vaccines. We do lots more than just COVID. And it tells about the trials and the data, and it's got it all there.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for joining us for this Friday COVID Convo. Like always, we will have another Friday COVID Convo next Friday. So please join in around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time if you want to watch the next Friday COVID Convo. And we'll see you next week.